brother.
Hey, what's good? How are you?
I'm well, my friend. I'm well. And yourself?
Good.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, we're pretty much there.
Yeah, another one. Check the box.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
So
Another
I
year
won't.
learned.
I won't hesitate. I'm very anxious to hear what you've been up to this last season. So please, just quickly give us a background for any of the audience who don't know who you are. And then
Yeah. So I have a third generational creamery growing operation. I bought it my parents 2 years ago, and since COVID, I the farm is always conventional, very conventional minded. It's just the culture basically in our industry. We're here based in Massachusetts, we're an hour south of Boston on the urban side, certainly. And the whole culture is very cultural, is very chemical based. Just you know, I guess agriculture in general has that background. COVID was the great reset, which I sort of laughed at the time, but it actually ended up being a good reset. I started in growing cranberries, 2012. I think I was 25 years old. So young to it, but continued with my father and my uncle, what their growing method was. And just things didn't it was always seemed like we were always chasing ourselves. So during COVID, did a lot of reading, started learning about biology. One of the first product I bought was a bugs in a jug. It was like three bacteria. And I looked it up. I did like some research on it. I'm like, wow, it shows it can like defend against, it help the plant defense mechanisms, and there's more to it than just like, helping uptake fertilizer essentially. And kind of just spun down that rabbit hole. I ended up meeting Keith from Fish Brew, and he was starting off in his operation, which is a soil inoculant, soil biology additive. And it's continued on that rabbit hole. Last year, when I was on this podcast, Leighton mentioned fermenting, and we just hired some hand weeders that were hand weeding our bog, and I stuffed a bunch of totes filled with these, weeds we were normally just throwing into the woods, and to try to make a ferment. I didn't know what I was quite doing. I knew we added some biological inoculant, some molasses. So I started that in February, March timeframe, and ended up making about 7 ferments. So I have my own operation, and then I also consult for a large corporate cranberry operation. And so I think between the two of them, we did like 1,200 gallons or so ferment. So I think I did 500. I did 700 in my own operation, 700 gallons, and 500 gallons for their end. And we did a multi-species. Some of it was multi-species plants as an input. Some of it was single species. I'll dive into that as well. And then everything I did, I got tested for an NPK plus microbes. So that was a whole adventure to figure out which lab would take these samples. Call a lab and say, I have this plant juice I have. Can I get it tested? And they're like, it's so foreign to a lot of these bigger labs. So it was kind of neat. It was fun though. It was a fun little journey. So it was very neat on the ferments. Like I said, I only learned about it in February, so it was very new to me. Never heard of it. Never heard of the whole idea, and it's been neat once it opens your eyes to making nutrition for plants, like how much it just opens your eyes. The whole world around you is just filled with so much things we just throw away, just not nonchalant, and being able to grab something out of that.
So where did you end up sending it for testing? Did you use
Waters Lab in Georgia, and they considered it they put it through their manures analysts, and I reached out to Logan Labs, and they never heard of fermenting plants. They didn't know what to do with it, and someone had recommended it, so I was surprised, but I ended up reaching around to a bunch of different places, and then Waters Agricultural Laboratory in Georgia. They said they could throw it through their manure analysis, and it was, like my goal was to try to get like an NPK plus micros into it, just to sort of, as conventional mindset, like to try to, I want to document everything that, what I've been taught was NPK plus micros. So how do you convert this tea I'm making essentially? It's dirty water, otherwise, how do you make sense of it, So that was kind of neat to like get like pounds per 1,000 gallons. And then I never really figured out. I mean, I'm still working. I guess I did some math analysis to try to get like pounds per 100 pounds, like a fertilizer up. If you were to do like a dry fertilizer. A lot of this I was applying just boiler applications. So I know foilers typically you can do like a 1-to-10 ratio, and you get like 1 pound of a foiler will get you 10 pounds extra on the other end. Which is also still kind of I haven't really learned about that since 2020 anyway, so that was still new to me anyways. But like I said, we did about 7-8 batches, got them all tested. When I first heard about it, I went out to the bog. I got like fresh samples of just weeds I hand pulled out that were green. They had green roots, big roots on them. And I've been kind of like picking around in the biology, and I put them on a bucket, fermented them for 30 days, got them tested. And the test, it was like a 7-1-8 or 7-1-12 is what the test is. So like 7 nitrogen, 1 phosphorus, 12 potassium.
Yep.
So, and then I ended up, I was like, all right, so there's something to it, kept brewing different items. One of my brews was it was almost in line. The micros, the boron, zinc, magnesium, iron, calcium. It was exactly in line with what they call a Cran Max, a synthetic dry wettable powder for cranberries, which I was really intrigued about because like that stuff was, what was it, $100 a pound, and I made this stuff for $1, basically $1 a pound. So like it was shocking that something that was from nature, organic chemistry was it was like same ratio as what this stuff you could buy at the local ag supplier. Like I said, once I saw that, it was quite an awakening that like there's more to it than, like I said, with the same ratio. There's more to it than, you can try to get the NPK ratios over, but the fact that it was exactly the same boron, sulfur, zinc, calcium, exactly the same percentage as what you could buy for 100 times the price.
Crazy, right?
It really is. And like I said, once I did that, that was my 3rd ferment, and then I went nuts from there. I mentioned I did multi-species. I went back and got the old biodynamics books. We talk about horsetail, which is a weed. It's considered a weed on a cranberry bog. So many growers ahead of me had spent their lifetime trying to destroy this plant, and little did they know there was nutrition there. It was indicating what the soil needed. All you had to do was find a way to extract it. So we did a ferment of that. I did a ferment of stinging horse nettle. I had it at my house. So I had my cranberry operation, and then at my house we have cows that we run on grazing. So they graze certain patches throughout the year. They're only on grass when it's growing. Anyways, it makes beautiful pasture, but we don't, there's some weeds, I guess, the grass, the cows don't eat, and one of them is stinging nettle, which is, in the old biodynamic books, they talk about how beneficial it is. So I did a 50-gallon ferment of that, which is crazy. I stuffed this 50-gallon drum, stuffed it with this stinging nettle, fermented it for a month or so, and then when I went to drain it, like all these other ones I was doing up until then, like I drained it out, and probably about 1/3 of the plant material was still left. But the sting and nettle, 50 gallons, the plant material was down to it was a 5 gallon bucket worth of material left. It dissolved the whole thing. It was shocking. The whole thing went liquid. And I got that tested and that did wonderful too on the test. So like I said, that was a shock. That was very shocking to see that.
Well,
so I don't know if anyone's done that before, but
the interesting thing is, if you think about it, those weeds have been grown in those cranberry mixes for years. So the reason why they're so successful is because they're adapted or have or always adapted to that formula or something close to it. So it only makes sense that you harvest them, ferment them, and reuse them because they're ideal because they come from that environment. So it's one of the things that I've been working on for years is using weeds or plants as indicator species, not as oh well, this is a problem. It's not a problem. It's telling you something. It's giving you a message, and you didn't realize it. You intuitively figured it out, but you didn't realize how close it actually was to the answers to getting away from synthetics. So kudos to you for having the intuition and then the wherewithal to actually have it tested and come to find out, oh man, it's perfect.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was basically telling me the direction I needed to head. It was, and like I said, when you get tested, it kind of, I was still in that mindset of NPK. What do I have to do to, answer that equation? And when you get it tested, it was literally the answer that you can pay top dollar for. So I love to get more into the compost. I have a compost pile. I'm not active in it as much as I would like to be. That's why I think I've been leaning towards the ferments because they're a little more, for me, they're a little more passive. Like I said, I typically was doing 30 days. I don't know. I have some cooking now. I'm going to cook all winter. Do a good, few months, cook on them.
Are you adding any biology into them or just the molasses?
The molasses and then the EM1. So I did discover that, and then the last podcast host you had was great because I was like, what do you mean you can just extend it? I've heard about sourdough yeast. You can do that, and so I wasn't really quite sure. I wasn't sure if it was just like watering it down when they meant you'd extend it, or it was like like water, like sourdough, where you can essentially keep this living being alive and keep tapping into that. So I actually this morning. I had about a quart left of the EM and I had some molasses. And so I made another 5 gallon bucket. I'm going to let it cook up and so we'll go from there. So
good man. That's awesome. All right. So you've delved down the rabbit hole of ferments and have you started looking at the actual plants themselves that you're using in ferments, like especially with the multi-species? Have you researched what they are and what they do as far as serve a purpose in nature?
Yeah, so I ended up discovering a book called What Weeds Talk or What Weeds Say, or What Weeds Tell Us. I got it through Acres USA. Okay. It's basically, it looks like someone's like, what do you call it? Pre-doctorate's book.
Okay.
So it has a good description. It talks about like, the whole ecological transfer from bare soil to old forest growth and like how that progresses. And then that's like the first chapter or two. And then like the rest of it, is a whole list of plants that talk, all weeds, and they talk about what these weeds need to survive. So, so there's a lot of, so a great example is dodder is in there, which is a cranberry weed. Dodder is it's a yellow parasitic plant that does not have a root. What it does is it attaches to a host plant. And for some reason here in New England, very conventional operations, you would see dodder on, it would cover the cranberry vines. So cranberries, they kind of grow exactly like turf. You want to grow it into an area where it's 100% of the area. And So typically you would use fungicides, herbicides, all the pesticides, known to the man. But for whatever reason, dodder would only grow in the cranberry bogs. It wouldn't grow in the uplands, wouldn't grow in the trees. It would only grow where conventional cranberries are being grown. And I suspect it was because, and we always suspected because there were some limitations in terms of certain pesticides couldn't be used around wells, stuff like that. So there were certain restrictions on that end. So we had properties that you were restricted on what fungicides we could use, and the broad spectrum ones that we couldn't use, you would never had dodder in those areas. It would only grow in the areas where you could use the most extreme fungicides. So anyways,
it would grow. It would grow in the areas you use the worst stuff, or in the areas that you use.
It would grow in the areas you could use the worst stuff in.
Interesting.
But only those areas, and we'd use the same harvest equipment. We would never we would sterilize them, but they never got sterilized. Like things would get passed in between the properties. So in theory, those weeds are there, those seeds are there, but they were never established in these restricted areas. So anyways, that's one of the weeds that was in this book. Another one was poverty grass or little blue stem. That's in there. They also talk about horsetails in there. But it's funny, a lot of them are like low calcium environments that they prefer in, which typically is agricultural lands, because we're so focused on NPK. The rest of the elements are, alphabet soup kind of thing, until you start to realize it,
Yeah, they've been chewed up.
Yeah. So, and as I started, fermenting these weeds we were throwing away, we were hand weeding and then essentially throwing them in the woods. All of them were indicators of low calcium in the soil. So now my goal is to, I'm fermenting them, but as well as to trying to find another calcium source to raise up the whole soil profile. My tissue samples show I'm good at calcium, but the soil still shows it deficient. So, it's not a very mobile element.
So the interesting thing is that I'll bet if you ferment those weeds that are live in low calcium environments, that the weeds are actually high in calcium. And the reason why is because they're a successionary species. So their goal is to provide the most fertile soil. Each succession is there to make the soil better for the next succession. So I bet as a ferment, those would be incredibly powerful. Now, again, as a foliar, because it's never going to change the chemistry in the soil profile, but it will definitely supply much needed calcium in the plant itself because it's plant available. Remember, feeding plants, the plants don't have to work as hard as if you feed them plant material.
You make a great point. All these ferments are organic chemistry based, meaning the plant can instantly absorb it. It's not tied to a sol or tied to something else where it has to transfer it over. As the organic form, the plant absorbs it instantly. It's plant available. So, and that was part of, as I go through this process was, all right, I made this tea. What do I do with it? And I'm like, well, it's calcium, or it's organically based in terms of the on the chemistry side. So we just started doing foliar applications, and like I said, I made enough to do. I was basically doing one once a week, just a little extra work, but I was making the stuff for less than $1 a gallon. I mean, you can't buy fertilizer for that price, not even near that price,
So it must have helped your bottom line tremendously.
Yeah, I kept thinking about you, Leighton, in the back of my head. A dollar saved is a dollar earned, and it actually, it's true, all these things, because otherwise I'd have to go out and buy it, and I couldn't buy it for $1, $1 a gallon. No way.
And you couldn't get the same plant reaction either, because that plant's going to have to do all kinds of processes to break down those, elements that are in a salt-based or synthetic-based form. The microbes have to do the work. The plant has to feed the microbes. So the plant's burning ADP to feed the microbes to get them to break shit down so that it can feed it back to the plant. So think of all that extra work that's required when all along you could be just using these ferments that are going to create a way easier method for feeding the plant, and therefore that directly correlates into more cranberries, more growth, healthier plants. It's just win-win-win right up the line.
Oh, 100%. Pre 2020, we were so used to you buy a fertilizer, you can see the plant starting to yellow, you apply it, you're going to get a good green reaction, but then 2-3 weeks later, it's going to go back to yellow. I mean, that plant reverts back. You can see it. So then you end up doing, a second application, a third application. And a perfect example right now is we're in our dormancy period. And, like I said, we raise cows at our home, where I live. And we don't apply any fertilizer on the lawn. It's just, our pasture's right there. The cows, they go out and graze during the growing season. Right now, they're tucked in where they can't beat up everything. But the mycorrhizal has expanded from the pasture. Our lawn it's green right now. We've gone through, 10-degree Fahrenheit, below 0 degrees for you Canadian viewers. And the grass is still green. It's still green. It's growing. It's happy, versus I look across the street. My neighbor, he tends his lawn every week, applies whatever, mows it all the time, is applying. I mean, it's a second job over there. And for me, it's growing into my ears. I can't handle it. All I do is mow it, and it still keeps going.
Amazing how well things work when you don't fight nature, right?
Yeah. So, I was pretty excited with the ferments. Like I said, these are plant ferments, and I had thought I ended up buying some books that talked about or fruit ferments, and I thought, oh, I'll never get the chance to do that. It's too, it's more valuable to sell the fruit, or to find a better value for the fruit. But fortunately or unfortunately, this year we had an oversupply of cranberries, so they arose an opportunity for me to be able to ferment 500 gallons of cranberries. So I did 2 different batches. I did a batch where it was clean fruit, conventional fruit, but it was cleaned. It would have gone to the processor, but they didn't want it because of the oversupply. So they were essentially dumping it, and I grabbed a bunch of totes and filled them up. And then I also had some where on my own operation, we've begun more ag tourism aspect. So we've been offering more of a farmer to retail, farmer to consumer experience. So I'm selling more fresh fruit. We have a little screening plant on our site, and part of in the screening process, you still get byproduct, essentially fruit that doesn't quite meet the expectations that you'd like. Normally I would just throw out my compost pile and break it down, essentially. So this year I fermented a few totes of that, so it's slow cooking, so we'll see what comes of it, but the stuff it smells really good.
Nice. Do you have a press? Do you make your own cranberry juice?
No, I don't have a press, but I bought, so I've been using totes mostly as like the vessel to ferment these things. So I filled these totes, and then I bought a blender blade and put it on a drill extension. So using that to break down. So cranberries have a harder skin. So yes, a lot of them they're soft, but the skin is still solid. So trying to break that down to expose it to the inoculant. So anyways, I bought a blender blade that I put on a drill and was drilling a bunch of these. Like I said, they've been cooking for about a month or so. Smells really good. So, we'll see what happens of it. Worst case, the cranberries get drunk off of it, but
you very well may end up kind of making a wine.
that's what it smells like, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised, but
yeah, I'm not at all, because you've got all the right ingredients to ferment and make a alcohol. Whether you want to call it a wine or a whiskey, it depends on how long you ferment it for. No, that's the reason why I asked you if you had a press, dude, because you could not only be making fresh cranberry juice to sell, to direct to the clients to come on your tours, but you could also make like a cranberry wine, dude, with a press. And believe it or not, but I have 4 big industrial presses that will do probably 5, maybe 7 or 8 gallons at a whack.
Okay. Yep.
That I just moved out of my shop because I no longer use them. I used them when I was making large scale inoculants to ship around the place. So I would take it, my compost, mix it with fish brew, worm castings, soft collide it, then screen it. And the only problem with the screening is I still had to get the moisture level down to around 40% because otherwise it would go anaerobic. So I had these presses that I started playing around with. And then I finally got to a point where I got too much for the little presses I had. So I had this guy making up these, industrial presses. Now they're not stainless steel. They're not galvanized. So they would need some love as far as like paint and stuff if you're going to actually make food grade. But if you're interested, hit me up and let me know. If you pay for shipping, I'll ship you one out to play with. Because
No, I'm curious. Yeah.
I had tremendous successes with this. And it's funny, but I was thinking about that, like on the way out there to Peach Hill where I was dropping them off this morning. I'm like, I wonder if I should do like a raffle on my Instagram account for people that want to make, because they also make humic or fulvic acid. If you're pressing compost and you don't overpress, what comes out is that, urine colored friggin' liquid that's pure fulvic acid. So they can be used for a lot of different things, but I was like, I don't want to throw them away. Not only did I, invest some money into them, but they're great fucking tools in the right hands. So kick that around a little. And if you're interested, hit me up in the new year and we'll see where it goes. But
no, yeah, no, it sounds good. That's the funny thing with cranberries is, most of our on the commodity end where it goes to craisins or juice, we wet pick it. So we'll pick it in the water, we flood the water, the cranberries will float to the surface. So that was part of the issue I was having. I put up a tote and then I put water into it. And like you add a little bit of water, the whole batch would float up. I'm like, well, now what? Now I have all this, it's like 5 gallons of water, 10 gallons of water, and everything else is just floating. So I think the ferment would work great to be able to press it down, squeeze it a bit more, get more out of it essentially.
Well, yeah, once you crack the case, you get the juice. Now the case is cracked. It'll let all the bugs in there to start chewing it from the inside out. I think at the end of the ferment, you're definitely going to have, plant material at the bottom. But instead of having them float, they're gonna sink and get consumed a lot quicker.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's part of it. Is like as they've gone through this process, is learning. You can put the whole plant in, but it seems to work faster if you can shred that plant, break it up.
Yeah, and the juice could actually go right in the ferment as well. It's like
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. You put that right in there.
Press the whole fucking batch and just dump it in.
It's funny when you had Andy Lopez talk about that Kemp plant grinder.
Yep.
My old man gave me one. This thing's from like the 1960s. You pull the choke, or you pull the rope and everything, and there's no safety on it. It's just the thing spins like a little wood chipper, and so I did a batch where I was putting plants through it, and it kept up pretty good. I was surprised. It was a little nerve-wracking, but it shredded it right up. It worked pretty good.
Yeah, those chipper shredders are wonderful, especially on small scale. If you get big scale now, it's a problem. You need
so that's what ended up happening. It was like I ended up doing such bigger volume. I was like, it worked good for like on the smaller end, but I have a bunch of cannabis stems. I think I'm going to run through it.
Oh,
because right now I'm like, I don't know what to do with, I was going to just compost them or whatever, but your previous guest mentioned putting the whole thing in there. So
yeah, absolutely. It just jump starts the process, dude.
Yeah.
Like the cranberries, it jump starts it big time. All right, so let's dive in a little bit more about your yields this year. How did you do? As far as production.
Good, good. So last year we got hit with a nasty. We had two Arctic blasts, one in April and then one in May. So that really hurt us in general. It hurt the whole region in general. So we were down a decent amount last year. So compared to last year, we were up 40% this year, which is so I was basically on a tight budget because I only had so much from last year to pay for this year. Some of the bills are what they are. They're pretty steady no matter what your crop is. Um, so that was kind of the lure with the ferments is I could, beforehand I was buying in a lot of liquid fertilizers. So now I could just make my own, and it kind of, like I said, it opened up a whole world. Being able to make it for $1 a gallon it's unbelievable. So like I said, this year we were up 40% overall. We had about 10% of our property was renovated from 2020 to 2021. So it's cranberries, they're annual plants or they're perennial plants. We have some beds that are over 100 years old. We have some beds that are 3 years old. The older beds are native cranberries, meaning they were harvested essentially from Cape Cod, from the sand dunes of Cape Cod. A lot of farmers, we do ag tourism, so we get farm tours. And a lot of the guys like, wait, you're still using native plants? I'm like, yeah, we still have them. Some of them are better than others. Like anything 100 years old, some have beauty marks, some don't. So, but it's funny, the native ones definitely respond a lot better to the biodynamic or just the whole, biological farming method.
Yep, of
So,
course they do. They've been in nature a lot longer, and they've been connected with your environment, your terroir, your Appalachia. So it only makes sense that especially since you're feeding them what's growing around them, that they really enjoy it. Now, so when you have a brand new bed, does it take a number of years for it to really start to produce, or what's the?
yeah, typically it takes 3 years. So the first 2 years, you're trying to push your plant to just grow vegetation. So historically, it's a lot of high NPK, and you try to knock off the flower. So they will flower between June and July. And if you have the ability, what we'll end up doing is we'll flood the beds with water for like a week or so, and that water will just knock the flowers off. So of course, we're not renovating to plant native varieties, which is, it's like we've been sort of led to believe the hybrids are the answer. But as I go down this path, I've discovered that the natives are a lot easier. So it's kind of a balance. And then, as I do my ag tourism, people are more interested in buying native fruit than they are buying something the size of an apple, especially for cranberry. So, it's a balance. But so typically we're renovating with a hybrid variety, third generation hybrid variety. And historically we tried to push it with NPK. I have 10 acres that are coming in to 3 years this year. And 3 years ago I met Keith, and we were literally planting the beds that year. And I talked I was like, oh, I've been playing with this fish fertilizer, it stinks, this and that. I was working with it that day when I met him, so I felt like I smelled. And then I met Keith from Fish Brew, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I deal with fish." I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I don't know, this stuff smells pretty bad." He's like, "No, no, no, I get it." I just thought, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I later learned, with the Fish Brew operation and this fish hydroslate. So my goal is for these. We've been renovating for 15 years, so I was like, you know what, I'll spend the next 3 years instead of trying to push it with NPK, trying to basically give it that steroid to push the plant to grow. Maybe I'll try a slower method, bring it in biologically, and see how that goes. So it was neat. Those plants were coming onto harvest this year. And historically, when you push the NPKs, the chemical NPKs, you get a lot of growth, a lot of plant growth. However, you get a lot of fruit rot. So fruit rot, you can't sell fruit that is rotten. It's near impossible to sell. No one wants it. It's disgusting. It usually goes in the woods. But you get your plants growing great, right? So I was like, all right, well, instead of maybe if I don't push it with the NPKs, if I slow it down a bit, use biologicals to try to, get me over the line, maybe they don't grow as fast, but maybe their fruit quality will be better. And it was true. It actually ended up working out pretty good. So these newer varieties, which typically, we end up throwing in the woods year 3 or, first year harvest, which is because the quality is so bad, because they didn't hammer them with chemical synthetic fertilizers. They came in pretty good. They came in well, and the fruit quality was good. So that was a win. They'll definitely take longer to grow the plant in to completely cover the whole bed. But if I can still harvest it without having to throw some in the woods, that's always a good.
So, have you tried the combination of fish brew plus the hydrolysate as the end source to push the plant?
Yeah, yep. So typically, when I first met Keith, my experience was you got to sterilize during bloom. Don't prevent any biology from seeing the flower, because it will allow your flower. It will infect the flower, allow the fruit to rot, and then you don't get anything on the when you go to harvest. So when I met Keith, he was talking about these bacteria and fungi in this product. I'm like, it was right there in bloom. I was like, all right, I'll buy a toe. I'll do a little bit of it. I was a little unsure. It seems so. It just seems so. It was so different than what I've been taught for 10 years to apply biology. I'm like, we're supposed to kill it. What are you talking about? Apply it. So, like that year, I bought a toe. I did, a gallon an acre and everything, or whatever it was. And it, as I'm applying it mid bloom, historically the scientists tell you you'll lose you'll rot your fruit out if you don't sterilize it. I was like, well, I'm injecting it. I'm putting it out through, we chemicate it. So we put it through the injection system. So the sprinklers are running. We inject into the sprinkler system and then it rinses out. I was like, well, either it's going to work great or it's going to be a horrible year. It's all going to end up in the woods. And it worked. It wasn't. It was a good year. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't. It didn't rot away like I suspected. Like I said, I was more worried. It's not like it was bad. It was down quantity, but the quality was fine. There was nothing wrong with that. It was just quantity was down. So whatever, it was down a little bit. It wasn't too bad. Ebbs and flows. It's part of the fun.
So was that the hydrolysate or was that the fish brew?
That was the fish brew. One of the, I can't remember which one it was. I don't think it was the bold, because the bold was expensive. So I was like, I'm not gonna, it was experiment at the time. I think I went with the what was it?
It was probably Rise
and Thrive. Yeah, the Rise and Thrive. Yep.
That's been screened out, so you don't have the chunks or the organic matter. But the reason I ask this is because whatever you used as a pump could have decimated the biology. You're still going to get some through, but typically if you're using any kind of centrifugal or pressurized pump, you'll blow shit up like big time. So you may have actually not had a really good delivery.
No, you made a good point, and I learned that. So initially we would inject 60 psi on the sprinkler side, and then I later learned, I'm like, Keith, you didn't tell me these things are sensitive to pressure. He's like, oh yeah, they're sensitive to pressure. I'm like, oh, well, that would have been nice. So, but fortunately, we use diaphragm pumps, so it's which is I later learned, which is more beneficial to it doesn't use as high a pressure.
Well, the key is it doesn't create what's called cavitation. So cavitation is what kills the organisms, and that
Okay.
cavitation usually occurs, right after the pump has pushed it, and that involves pressure too. So it has to be pressure, cavitation, destruction. So I'm glad that you have diaphragm pumps. So that makes me feel better that you did have a pretty good delivery, even though you were high PSI.
Yeah.
So that's good. No, and the reason I'm kind of hunkering on this is because, as you go forward, if you're using like a hydrolysate as your end source, especially in your restoration work, you're going to get a good result because the N is going to help push the plant, and the biology is going to mine the nutrients. Because let's face it, his stuff has phosphate solubilizing bacteria, potassium solubilizing bacteria, and I guarantee after years of production, there's so much organic N and P locked up and bound up in those soils that you probably would have enough fertilizer for 1,000 years, dude. But you have to have biology to open it up and break it up, because in its organic form, the only thing that'll do it is aquatic biology. And so, that's just years of experience of understanding this stuff, is that we don't need any of those fertilizers anymore. It's already built up everywhere around us. It's just the problem is we don't have the proper biology to unlock it and or deal with the sodic soils. Because remember, that salt needs to get pushed somewhere. It needs to get pushed down lower into the profile so that the protozoas don't come in contact with it. If they come in contact with it, man, it just sucks the cytoplasm right out of them, kills them. They don't even have a chance to cyst up. They're gone. So
no, anyway. You make a great point. Like I said, I bought my farm from my parents. It was typical 80s, 90s fertilizer regimen, 12, 24, 12, lots of phosphorus, but we're low in pH. So that stuff, half of it gets tied up instantly. So you take a soil sample and it's there, but the plant can't exit, can't grab it. It's all tied up. So, as you dive into the biology and you start to learn that these things can release them. The fish brew product is great for that. And after I learned about the high PSI, I learned I bring my pump pressure down to 30. So I'm injecting at a lower pressure, and I try to spread it over a longer period. So that way, and then we're rinsing it in for an hour. So it's getting more into the soil versus just sitting on top.
Yep. Very good.
Like I said, it's all these little things you learn. It took me a few years to figure it out, but that I consult for a farm. It's a corporate operation. They're high input, high output. Their goal is to be the first one to any new plant revelation. They want to be, it's a badge of honor to show that they're first, and they want to have the top output no matter what. So I've been on my journey for 2 years. I'm a consultant for them. I was like, hey, you guys check out this biology. Oh, this soil, or it's sterile. It's pointless. It's just ridiculous. And like, no, I kept pressing it. So finally I convinced them. We did a biology experiment. They gave us 3 sites. They gave us a super sand site, 18 inches of sand, like, I don't know, 0.2% organic matter. Super. Yep. There's nothing there. It looks beautiful engineered wise, but it's been a rough property. That was, I think it's a 5 to 8 year property. So recently renovated, newer hybrids. They gave us a 2nd generation hybrid that was probably planted 20 years ago, so it has some organic matter. And then we got a few, these old natives, 100-year-old plants, and we did 3 different, because what's happening now in the farming world is, Keith, the fish brew product's great, because they give you something right out of nature. But what's happening is you get a lot of lab-based biology where it's like 3 bacteria, 2 fungi that are synthesized in the lab. So those are coming in fashion. So, you got a salesman that says, hey, we can unlock your phosphorus for this and that. So we're like, you know what? Why don't, fortunately, they allowed us to experiment these different products over different properties, and some of them you basically showed their worth, and some of them they still did everything improved the soil because it's all still adding biology to what would have been a very hostile environment. However, the fish food product blew the rest of them out of the water, as far as I'm concerned.
So you know why? It's because in vivo versus in vivo versus in vitro. So in vitro, you're growing bugs in a bottle in a perfect environment, perfect food, perfect pH, perfect temperature. You throw them out into nature, they're only going to work for so long. They can't survive in that environment. Whereas Keith's product is coming out of nature. So it is already adapted to all these issues of pH change, temperature change, find your own food, motherfucker, right? And so in all the work I've done over the years, anytime I get bugs in a jug, I'm like, dude, yeah, it probably works for a period of time, but I'm not interested in buying your product every year. I want to buy a product, inoculate the soil, and as long as no synthetics are introduced, it's going to function forever. And I mean forever. It's going to evolve with nature, whether the weather changes or not. And so that's something that you need to have in your back pocket, is that you can explain to people there's a big difference between lab grown and nature grown. And you can use in vivo and in vitro. Most people understand in vitro based on in vitro fertilization, women that can't have children. Other people don't understand the difference between, what is it called? Artificial insemination. They don't understand that that's lab grown. So just keep that in mind as a something in your pocket, because as that corporation moves forward into the biologicals, which everybody is doing right now, the biostimulant market, oh my God, in the last 3 years has exploded. But those are all bugs in a jug. Nobody's doing, this in vivo style growing out of its biology. So when you start showing them that, hey, fish brew works 10 times better than this one, this is the reason why, they'll go, oh, that makes sense. Fuck the salesman. He's just trying to make money. Let's use something that's going to last in the soil forever.
No, it's 100%. It's so what we are. So the guy I work with, Alex there, as he calls it, science light. So they want us to be scientific, but not, they don't want it peer reviewed, essentially. So what we're doing is, like I said, we had 4 different products we applied with a control, and then the typical spray regimen of, the typical pesticides throughout the season. The fish brew product did get a post pesticide application as an ender to finish off the year in August. So they did get a little extra. But anyways, we were already working with, I think they worked with Fish Brew last year. So they were already working with them, for 1 year. And like you said, and then 2024, as soon as we hit 2024, it was everyone out of the woods was, oh, I have this biology product. I have this, I have that. It's simple to use. And then they were getting free products, this and that. So that's what kind of all right, well, maybe we should test these against each other, and see what the end results. And we ended up using Andy Marsh as our lab lady. So we did a pre-test sample before application, and some of the employees were curious about, cranberries. We do cultural practice of flooding. Will they survive a flood? Will they survive the pesticide regimen? And then will they survive post-harvest flood? So these are questions we were being asked. Alex and I were being asked to, how do you determine that? How can you quantify it, essentially? Because most people think, oh, it's biology, you flood it, it's dead. Once you get cut off the oxygen, it's dead. Reality, that's not the case. These things, they're stronger than you think.
Heck yeah. And remember, they're coming from an aquatic environment, so they love the flood.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that was the thing, was we noticed was all 3 products over the control improved the biology assessment. The fish brew quadrupled what the bugs in the jug did. like I said, granted, they got an extra application and they got the we did fish brew, inoculant, wait a week, and then the fish hydrolysate.
Yep.
While the other ones just got what they recommended, was just applying it and rinsing it in once a year, essentially.
Yep.
So, but then, like I said, on the other side is the applicators to try to convince them, hey, they're used to dealing with things that smell like salt or that are, they don't have much of an odor to it. So try to convince them, I know the fish brew product maybe not easy to work with because it may smell like life, or, it's to try to convince them to use that versus bugs in the jug. It's easier. It's powder. They're not smelling it. They're just pouring it in the water. Off it goes. So it was a bit of a challenge there.
Yeah, people,
on the application side, but
yeah, people get funky on when they smell hydrolysate.
Yeah,
let's face it, our body is designed to prevent us from consuming things that are not beneficial to our body or could kill us, i.e. something that smells really bad. So it's one of those things where, you got to tell people, look, you got to get beyond your body's reaction. Like, just don't breathe through your fucking nose. Breathe through your mouth while you're working with it, and it's going to dissipate. It's not like you're bathing in it, and let it go and get on with it. And that's the hardest thing for people to overcome, is that, as soon as they smell it, they start retching, and it's like, dude, don't fucking smell it. Don't breathe it. Just breathe in your mouth, and you'll be fine. So I understand
100%.
the cultural challenges.
Yeah, like I said, they're more. You got to understand, they're 20 years of dealing with chemistry, so we'll put the big boots on, we put the suit on, we put the mask on. Versus for me, when I'm I'm planning on my own farm, I want to be my flip flops. I want to be in my shorts. I don't want to, so it splashes on me as fish brew. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to kill me. Versus if it's a toxin, I'm more concerned about that. So, different standards there.
Hey, I'm living proof that it won't kill you. I've been bathing in that shit for fucking 17 years now.
That's awesome.
My mouth, my ears, and my cuts. People are like, oh my God, you're bleeding. You're playing with compost. You're gonna get sick. I'm like, dude, go away. Go away.
Oh, it's funny. It reminds me. I don't know if last year I talked about, I got involved with an organic working group, and so I just started the ferments, and I was hosting the second meeting or whatever, and I was showing them, oh, look at this, guys, I got it tested. I had a little sample jar of it just, it looked like if you took sand and put it in water, but it was like you couldn't see through it. It was like sandy water essentially. And I'm, I take the jar off, and I'm like, oh, you take a sip of it, or you smell it, And one of the guys was joking, he was going to drink it, so he gives it back to me. I'm like, sure, I'll drink it, take a sip of it, and I didn't get sick from it. It was, I skipped my Lent. Yeah, I skipped the next meal, but it didn't kill me. It didn't, I wasn't instantly puking. We're all having a good laugh about it, because we were joking, like it was like almost like you were passing around a thing of scotch or something like that, but yeah, like I said, it did kill me. It worked out great. And
did it cleanse you?
All part of the fun. Yeah. I mean, I guess it cleansed, like I said, I don't know. My tummy was a little upset for a little bit, but I got through it. It was all right.
That's all right. I mean, it's like drinking pickle juice, dude.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
It's fermented friggin', although it's salt and preservative and everything else, but if you're really doing pickling, that pickle juice is amazing for cleansing, and especially if you have like a stomach ache and you drink it, it works fantastic at reducing the out of control bacteria that are creating that ache because you're bloating. So it's a great way to heal an upset stomach. But again, you should be using an organic fermented pickle juice, not something. Don't be drinking that shit out. Fucking kill you.
Behind special, I know.
right. So back on the track, like in the experiment you did with the corporate world, what were the yields like? were the yields similar, or did fish brew blow them out of the water?
So the yields were, so on the super sand bog, it is a bed that was built, or it's a cranberry renovation bed. So it's 90 acres in total, split up between 3 beds. They're all 18 inches of sand. I describe it as a property that was built by committee, where it wasn't built. Essentially, there were compromises. It wasn't really built like how it should have been built. So it's been a property it's like the Knights of Excalibur. It's a sword in the ground, and everyone tries to pull it out, but no one can pull the sword out. It's just because it's just poorly designed. So that one, it was pretty. There were discrepancies. The control was just a lost cause, no matter what. However, the biology aspects fared better. It's a bed that has historically ended up in the woods because of the fruit quality has been horrible, no matter what. So that one, and that was actually one I mentioned last time. We worked with cooperative. So the cooperative scientist paired in on that. And so, like I said, it was whatever. It is what it is. It was nothing significant in terms of between the different beds. However, it's a cursed property as well. So I kind of it was a great science one because we already knew where it was going to end up anyways. But the second generation hybrid bed that was 20 years old, we did the same experiment. We did the fish brew, product A, B, C, control. And we got Andy Marsh to test pre-hand and then post in August. So after, we had her test it in April before any fertilizer or pesticide applications, and then post all of those applications. The fish brew had the greatest improvement. And all the biology ones, they still improved a little bit on the test results, and they improved quantity and quality wise. So they, versus the control. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now in terms of the quantity, between the fish brew versus the others. But I know on paper the fish brew definitely blew it out of the water in terms of increase in good bacteria, good fungi, protozoa. There was no way going around it. And so part of our science light is we have to present this in front of a board. So we're trying to explain what is biology, what does it do, so the best way we can describe it, we're trying to simplify it essentially. So Alex and I described it as you can get the Equate Walmart special probiotic. You can get, Nature's Valley probiotic. You can buy generic yogurt, or you can buy Greek yogurt. Maybe you don't like the Greek yogurt because it makes you gag a little. However, the Greek yogurt may be better for you, versus the, Walmart special probiotic. So it to try to basically simplify it for for the people who aren't familiar with it, essentially.
Gotcha. And when you use the herbicide or whatever pesticide you use, did it kill all the biology, or did Andy do a report?
No. So it was surprising. Like I mentioned, it's high input, high output. So the one I'm thinking of, the marsh bogs, they're 20 years old. They've been historically high input NPKs, high input pesticides, high output. So I thought it was going to be pretty much sterile because of everything they applied to it, but they already had a good base layer to begin with, which is surprising. So it makes me wonder, and I almost wonder, and they do a lot of chemical foliar applications. So I wonder if the plant is so supercharged already, it's bringing that biology in, or obviously it wasn't killing it, whatever they were doing. And then they another cultural practice in cranberries is applying a layer of virgin sand. So what is done, it's an old as 200-year-old practice where you apply sand on top of the cranberry vines, and it stimulates the growth. Cranberries are early pioneer species in terms of the ecological scale or succession.
Yep.
Meaning, so if they have a bare spot of sand, the runners will run out to that bare soil to colonize it, to overtake it. So what our oldest cultural practice is to apply a thin layer of sand, and that reinvigorates the vines. So this property has been exposed to that over multiple years. So I almost wonder if either that's bringing in biology, and or the high input is also contributing to that somehow. Because I was really surprised that the base level to begin in the spring was high to begin with.
Nice. Yeah, I would tend to think that it does come in primarily on the sand, but also you live in an area where you have a lot of wildlife. You're not in the city. You have ocean birds. They are renowned for having wonderful fertilizer value as well as super biology. They live on fish, so again, wonderful guts. So you're getting some biological inoculant anyway, regardless. Plus the stuff floating in on the wind, plus the the different animals, the deer and the all of it, the whole ecosystem around you. Where you are is still a pretty intact ecosystem. It's not what it was when I was growing up, but it's still much better than like where I live now. Where I live now, there's no bugs, dude. Like there were no bugs. We leave your screen open year round out here. There's none. Like I literally in the garden to bring them in because I was like, this is scary to not have any bugs at all. We have ants and termites. That's it.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, you mentioned two things that kind of bring up a point. So that the marsh property literally drains into the ocean. So like you mean being next to the ocean, it is right there. I mean, it's got to be 20 feet above the sea level.
Yep.
It's literally right there. So I bet you that like you said, added into it. And before I was a consultant for this company, I worked full time as a foreman. I managed 200 acres there, and like I said, high input. So I was doing some sprays one night, and I was at the point I like to listen or read a lot of books. So I got around that time I was reading 100 books a year, listening to 100 books a year. So I was spraying one night, and I was listening to Silent Spring, reading into it, and I'm spraying a known pesticide, and like I'm looking around, and the lights are on, but there's no one there's no one around. It's dead, and I was kind of a turning point for me personally to try to get away from that growing method, at least in my own operation. I can't control on that end, but I can push them a little, so that's been, since then I've been trying to push them to the direction. But yeah, it was literally, I'm listening to Silent Spring as I'm spraying a pesticide, and like I am creating the problem, so it was, for me personally, it was like and I looked at the year the book was written. It was 50 years that the book was written. I'm like, I have to get away from this. That was really my beginning of my journey. Was dealing with corporate farm, spraying a pesticide, and listening to Silent Spring. It was like the perfect triangle. I'm like, I gotta change.
It was a good bitch slap.
Yeah, basically. So, and actually, so it's good too that I mentioned that. So last year I talked to you. I had thought about going organically on, I guess we do ag tourism, so we deal with the public. People are always asking about pesticides, organic operations. I was typically told you can't do it in Massachusetts. There's too many insects, the typical, ragtime story why you can't grow organically. You never make any money, so I just kind of believed it because I never tried it. I didn't know. But last year I had a native Howe variety, which is native to Massachusetts. I have 1 acre of it, so it's not a big acreage. And we do the ag tourism. We sell fresh fruit to the public. People kept asking about it. So 2023, I looked at my records. I'm like, well, I was one pesticide away from going organic. Why don't I just try it? It's 1 acre. It's on a, if it all sinks, it is what it is. It's an acre. I can survive, So I joined NOFA, the Northeast Organic
Farming.
Association.
Yep.
Yep. And then they hooked me up with a mentor who is a guy I knew in the cranberry world, but I never really knew him per se. I knew of the guy. So Don Fernandez, he had an organic operation. He sold directly to consumer, fresh fruit. And so he was my mentor. So the bed was, it was 1 acre next to 35 acres of conventional fruit. Like I said, it was an experiment. I wanted to see if I could do it. How would it work out? So as a mentor, or as a mentee, I should say, I would call my mentor Dom during the spring. Dom, I got these insects. What do I do? Nothing you can do. So these insects are cranberry weevil. There's no organic option for them. You can't. There's no organic spray for them. Conventional world, you have a list of synthetic insecticides you can use against them. And I've been like learning on my biological journey. Yes, as your plant gets healthier, they can defend themselves against certain insects. However, this insect, its life cycle depends on the cranberry's life cycle. So you have the cat and mouse game essentially going on between these two species. So I call them, April 15th, Dom, I got 4 weevil. What do I do? Oh, there's nothing you can do. It's organic. Okay. Call them the next week. Dom, I got 10 weevil. What do I do? And keep in mind the spray threshold on the conventional world is 4. So here I'm at 10, and double what it should be. It's in theory supposed to be panicking. Nothing you can do. And the cranberry weevil, what they want to do is they plant their egg in the pre-flower. So the cranberries, they grow out with these little hooks, hence the cranberry name, because they look like little cranes. And then those hooks will turn into flowers.
I did not know that.
Yep. Yep. So the weevils, they like to come along and plant their egg in one of the pre-flowers and then eat the other ones off. So the plant puts all its energy in that one hook, and then the egg will hatch before it flowers, and they'll eat their way out. So we're getting into scattered bloom. Dom, I'm sweeping. I got 20 weevil. What do I do? There's nothing you can do. You don't worry about it, Cass, this and that. I'm like, Dom, this is insane. Tip my other conventional beds. I've sprayed them twice. I've chased them. It's like, it's nothing you can do, Cass. All right. Like I said, it's 1 acre. I'll just, I'm fighting my lip. I'm like, all right, I promised myself I'd try it out. I'm gonna keep going. So then the flower comes. The bed looks beautiful, lots of flowers. Typically, if you had weevil damage, they'd eat all the flowers. There would be nothing out there. They're in bloom. And on the conventional side, and then the flower will start to set in the cranberry. The bees will come and pollinate it. They'll start to turn to a little cranberry. And on the conventional side, there is a summer population. There's a spring population. There's a summer population. Conventional side, which is the same property, little ways away, a few hundred yards away, my conventional beds, they had 20 weevil. Summer population. I go to my organic bed, nothing. 0 summer population. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. This can't be true. Stupid again, 0. I mean, not even 1 or 2. They were all on the conventional side. And so I sprayed the conventional side, but it was an eye opener that, like I said, historically we've been taught, you see that many weevil, you're not going to have any flowers, you won't have any fruit. But as Dom had mentioned, if you spray, you end up messing the whole ecosystem, and then the ones that survive are the ones you don't want to survive. So it really was an eye opener for that. So I wanted to share that because it's just, I've never seen it, and I was all about not spraying pesticides, but you see those crazy pest numbers, you get nervous, but it worked out in the end.
Yep. It's again, it's be the steward, not the manager. So yeah, you got to be out there stewarding, observing, paying attention, but not over loving it to death, right? And I think that again, this is sample 1,000 at least in my life, where as the transition occurred, the person I was working with panicked because of the bugs. And then when I took the time to show them, like, okay, yeah, you do have some borers, you do have some spider mites, you do have some of these other pests. Watch, just relax and watch. And all of a sudden, the predators come in, the populations get in balance, and then there's no damage. They're like, well, why didn't that bug damage my plant? I go, because what happened was he became food for another bug, and the balances came into friggin' play, and they're not going to damage it because they're not out of control. They're actually part of the system. Like, pests are often turned advantageous when they're not out of control. As soon as they get overpopulated, that's when they become a pest. And people don't realize that nature will take care of itself. Sure, if you got a real sickly plant, they're going to attack it and take it out. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. But they'll still keep in balance with the healthy plants around them. So thank you for sharing that, because people need to hear that they don't have to panic when it's organic.
No, 100%. Like I said, I panicked. I knew that. I knew the slogan. I didn't want to do it, and I panicked the whole way. Fortunately, they had that mentorship where I could call Dom once a week and say, Dom, I'm going to lose it all, this and that. And he was like, no, it's fine. And he was right. The ecosystem, it leveled itself out.
Yep.
So and actually I had an increase of crop that year on that bed, which I was surprised. I figured it'd be maybe the same as last year or down, but it was actually significantly above it.
So do you ever do tests on the berries? Like, do you get energy, calorie, nutrition, vitamin, mineral? Is that part of your regimen as far as like evaluating the value of the cranberries themselves?
No, I joined the Bio Institute, or what the hell? It's like they do like the bionutrition level of different crops, and I plan to send them a sample because part of our organic group is we were trying to figure out. So organic, people who don't know, you have to meet these strict requirements. Everything input organic. It can't be you can't be having any outside, like you can't if you have shared water with a conventional operation, that organic side cannot be considered, it won't be eligible for organic. So there's some operations where you can grow them organically, but they'll never be certified organic. So we're trying to figure out how do you capture value on fruit that's grown organically but can't be certified organically. And so one of the things I thought about was the nutritional density of it. And I talked to them. I think they were changing. There's something going on where they were changing their headquarters or operations in early 2024, and then I never followed up. But I had planned to send them samples of conventional, like pure hardcore conventional, grown conventional but not certified, and then certified organic to see if there was a difference, and what the difference was.
There's a lab, I believe, in Illinois or Ohio called Kellogg's, and they are the lab that Kellogg's has to use globally. Like this is heavy hitters. They're not bullshit. And they do all of those testing. And I could jump up and grab you a shot of what the lab name is so you can reach out to them. But in past, when I've done tests on, conventional versus biological, the results are incredibly dramatic. And the key is, like you said, it's like everybody knows organic's cheating. No matter what you buy, if it's labeled organic, it's still not 100% organic. They're allowing a certain percentage of inputs. I mean, Omri stamps fucking bags of fertilizer that are organic that have 15-20% urea in them. That's not fucking organic, right? So So I can get certified organic farm and I can use certified organic Omri products that are synthetically infused. So, this is where we've got to stop allowing words to get manipulated by these large corporate giants, because as soon as they manipulate it a little bit, like first it was, oh, well, if it's less than 5%, it's still organic. Oh, but then next thing you know, oh, it's less than 25%, it's still considered organic. They'll push that number right up to fucking 49% and still call it organic. And that is a lie, and it's not right. So here is the only way that you can verify that your product is better than anybody else's, and that's with this nutritional testing. And if you have nutritional report of your neighbor's cranberries and yours, even though they're using the same water source, and you're showing a significant difference, well, that's a great way to go back to the organic certification and say, hey, look, the water's bullshit, dude. You got fucking lied to, man. The water has nothing to do with it. It's about the biologicals. And here's the proof. And that should give you at least a foot in the door to get them to start thinking outside the box of, oh, well, you can't be certified organic because you're within 100 yards of a synthetic farm.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So what? I don't care if you fucking overspray my shit. As long as I have the biology there to break up those synthetics. And I could go down this rabbit hole fucking deep with you right now. Some of the work I'm doing with is bioremediation. Bioremediation is fucking blow your mind away as to, these chemicals. They say, oh, forever chemical, PFAS. No, bullshit. You have the right biology, it'll fucking tear that shit apart like nobody's business. And half of it is based on the covalence, the electrical electrons, how many electrons you have. If you have too many or not enough, they can either be biologically available or non-biologically available. In other words, they could be uptaken. You could eat it and it wouldn't hurt you because it's non-bioavailable. It's like lead, right? If lead's bioavailable, man, it's going to cause brain damage. But if it's non-biologically available due to the fact that it's missing an electron or it's sharing an electron, you can digest it, shit it out, and nothing's going to happen.
All day. Yeah.
So there's that piece of the puzzle that has been stonewalled for forever by these giant corporates, the elites, because they don't want us to understand this. They want to scare us into this corner where we think that if we spend $20 on this apple versus buying a bundle of apples for $20, that we're somehow getting something better, when in reality, you're not. You're just getting gouged. You're getting screwed. But you can't lie about nutrition. You can't. And so I think that, moving you forward in the work that you're doing, you should get paid more, and you should allow more people to understand the value of what you're doing by the fact that you are getting paid more. And the only way to do that, fuck organic certification. Yeah, it's important. Please get it if you can. But even if you can't, that nutrition is going to clearly state, oh my God, this is what we used to get fucking 70 years ago. This is nutrient dense food and fruit and juice, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a rant there, but dude, I'm so sick of these fucking everyday battles where we've been stonewalled, cornered, fearmongered to the point where we can't move anymore, right? And they've taken away all of our abilities to move in a proper direction because, oh, you shared water. Oh, you're within 100 yards. Oh, you're upwind of this conventional farm. Bullshit. Biology trumps fucking everything.
No, it's true. Like I said, I'm still going to go forward with my organic. I'm second year into it. My mentor mentioned is like, hey, you're using a sprinkler system that is connected to the conventional system. I'm like, well, there's a valve. They said, no, you have to have a separate well. I'm like, I'm not going to put in a $10,000 well for an acre for an experiment. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. I don't see it paying itself off. Maybe it would, but that's part of the issue is I can't share a similar well. I have to use a completely separate, and I get it. They want it quarantined or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's still Roundup. There's still PFOS in the rainwater, and you're not preventing that from going on the property.
You're never going to prevent cross contamination. Never.
Yeah. Never.
Even if you drilled your own fucking well, you're pulling from the same goddamn source.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And so again, if you have documentation like nutrition, and it's you got to wrap your head around like what it means. Like they give you a level of energy. Well, what the fuck does energy mean? I'm looking at food. Is that my is that my energy? No, it's the energy to consume it, to digest it. So the lower the number of energy is, the better it is, because it's easier for your body to metabolize it, to digest it. So the easier it is to digest, guess what? The more you get out of it, right?
It's like the ferments.
Yeah. Dude, another one is water. Like they'll say, oh, how much water content? And I called the lab. I was like, why are you measuring water in the product? And they're like, well, think about it, Leighton. If you are zero water, that means you're more nutrient dense because you don't have excess water. If the animal, we were talking specifically about cows and corn, if the animal consumes this corn kernel and it has 15% water, well, that's 15% less nutrient. That means the cow's going to have to eat 15% more. And at the end of the fucking day, the cow can drink the water. It doesn't need the water in its food, right? So it's a whole different mindset about looking at food. How does the body digest it? How much energy? How much nutrition? How many vitamins and minerals? What are those levels? And dude, if you do this, literally, if you do, transition, organic, conventional, you're going to trip. You're going to fucking trip. And so,
all right, I got to do it for 2025. That's a good goal.
yeah, hell yeah. You'll see it. You'll see the difference. And now it's just a matter of how you present that information, both to the organic certification board, because they got to get off this bullshit fucking, oh, you shared well. Fuck you. It has nothing to do with the well. It has to do with what you're putting on it. And if you are using biologicals, they're breaking down these things that are toxic. And better yet, they're increasing nutrition. And this is the only way to show it. And if these guys, these organic certifiers have any brains left in their head, they'll be like, damn, that's a real compelling argument. What do we say?
I will say I've noticed I fresh fruit my native early black variety, which is it ripens in mid-September, early October, and then I fresh fruit my native Hal variety. The native Hal is the organic. The native early black it's been grown biologically for the past few years anyways. But the biggest thing I've noticed is I don't have the fruit. Like typically fruit rot is like you get your fruit turns brown or mushy, then starts to decompose. Historically, if it's conventionally grown, what happens if it's biologically grown is it shrivels. It doesn't, it loses water and becomes like a craisin or like a raisin. So the fruit's still there. It's just, it doesn't rot. It just becomes smaller of itself. It's pretty neat to see that. Because like I said, historically it would turn like a dark red or like I said, just like a brown, like a rotten pumpkin kind of mentality. Yep. Yeah, rotten apple. Versus now it's shrinking. Like it's still holding the fruit shape and everything, the flavor, but it just shrinks. It just dries itself out essentially. It's crazy. It really is. If you know what you're looking at, it's crazy to see.
I wonder, like, if that's just the case that the fungi, I'm assuming it's a fungus, is being stopped by the fruit itself. The fruit has enough energy to combat it by shedding the water. Because remember, when it turns gushy and mushy, you've increased the water, right?
Mm.
So the fungi wants to increase the water in the berries so that it can digest the juices or the enzymes or proteins, whatever it is. So by drying itself out, it's basically preventing the fungus from catastrophically expanding and multiplying and killing and turning it into mush for itself.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
I mean, think about it. It might be interesting to, again, throw something like that in the mix when you're doing your other testing. Like go out and specifically find of some of the fruit that has shrunk, so it's been infected, and then have that nutrition tested. Because maybe it's just condensing the nutrients even more. So as a fruit, like like a craisin, it might have more value and less energy to dry the fruit out to make it into a craisin.
Yeah, like I said, it's been eye opening to see that. Like I said, historically it would just become mush, become mud essentially, and now it's just drying itself out. So it's not a coincidence.
No, it's biology hard at work, my friend.
Yeah.
And remember, inside those berries, there are endophytes. There's endophytic fungi. There's endophytic bacteria. There could be all kinds of competition too. That's helping prevent the prolific expansion of one specific strain of fungi, and essentially converting it into a food source for the one that's protecting the berry. Because this is a battle, right? The endophyte that's living in the fruit doesn't want to get turned into mush, doesn't want to get outrun. It wants control. So I'll bet you there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So yeah, I expect you to be back on next year in the fall after harvest to have this conversation again and see what it is that you've now proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can use as evidence, both in your organic certification as well as validating the value of your berries versus conventional. And also, for your local marketing, I think it would be a three-way hint.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, you bring up something. So cranberries are Iroquois plants, and so they have their own special mycorrhizal fungi. And there's like 3 scientists in the world that study Iroquois mycorrhizal. So one of them reached out to me this year because they were doing sampling through USDA in Wisconsin, and I had got in touch with them because our local pathologist knew I was getting crazy about fungi and everything. And she's like, "Oh, maybe you should talk to this lady over here." So she was doing these. She was trying to do like a background sampling of Iroquois mycorrhizal. She was taking organic mycorrhizal on organic operations, conventional sampling, wild plants growing in Wisconsin, wild plants growing in on the Cape and everything. So I kind of gave her a hint of what I was doing, talked to her for a little bit. So I sent her some samples of it's a 120-year-old native bed I have. Beautiful bed. It's in Milestone State Forest. I think I mentioned it before. So anyways, my sample, I can't remember if it was endophytes or sacrophytic fungi. But anyways, the sample I sent her, she hadn't seen it anywhere else, this type of fungi that was growing there. And she was really excited that, somehow, I don't know if it was the fish brew, or if it was the environment, or just the whole combination of me trying to reduce the toxins I'm throwing on it and, get this native plant essentially to go on all cylinders.
Are you still in touch with her?
Yeah, I have the email. It wasn't until you mentioned it that I remembered that she was. Yeah, they were saying it was. I think it was it endophyte or sacrophytic.
It's probably a saprophyte. Endophytes we do not know much about. The closest we got to endophytic fungi is mycorrhizae, and mycorrhizae really aren't endophytic, although they do have a direct plant connection. They have never been shown to take the plant over. Like they've been shown to create propagules inside of the plant root. Like they've sent off another branch, and that's bloomed and come out, and so they've created another what we call infection site. But mycorrhizae has never been shown to completely go through a cycle, a life cycle, only inside the plant, right? So that's an endophyte. So you have saprophyte, which are the ones that live outside. They create soil tilth, soil structure, no connection with the plant, only a connection with the rest of the soil food web.
Okay.
You have this mycorrhizae, which have a direct connection with the plant and with nature and with minerals, nutrients, organic matter, you name it, minerals. And then, of course, that the last one we just talked about is the endophytes. So yeah, you know what? I would kill to friggin' get her number in contact, because Iroquois, like you said, is one of the least studied mycorrhizae on the planet. And I've been blessed to have Efren in my life. Shout out for years, and he, took me probably 10 years to get him to break outside his box and talk about theory and theorize on different types of interactions and reactions, because he's hardcore scientist. Like he can't theorize, because then he jeopardizes, and that's typically with a lot of scientists. But he was the one that first introduced me to the understanding that there was this third, and he's even talked about a fourth type of mycorrhizae, which I've never heard anybody talk about, and I forget what he called it. But there's still so much more that we need to learn about.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah,
go ahead.
She did a presentation. Like I said, she was USDA funded, so she did a presentation on her work, and it's an online virtual thing. So I'm the guy that asks 100 questions, and especially when it's virtual, they can edit me out, because you sent the question in, but a third party looks at it. No one, the public doesn't see it. So I keep sending these questions in, and one of the questions I asked was, so it's Iroquois mycorrhizal. You have the plant, you have the fungi. Like any relationship, there typically is one person or one side's a little more dominant than the other. And I was trying to ask her, which is more, who's in charge? Is the plant in charge? Is the fungi in charge? And she wouldn't answer it. She kind of wrote me off, but I kept pressing her though. I was like, all right, so you have 30 acres of cranberry bogs. Is it one mycorrhizal over that whole property? Is it multiple ones? Is it, because was it Yellowstone has that giant mycorrhizal organism? 40 acres or Oregon. Yeah. So I was trying to get her to admit that this is what's happening on our operations. And, she was dodgy on it. She kind of answered, but not, I'm like, come on, tell me who's in charge? And she wasn't, she wouldn't admit it, but I think I'll get her one of these days.
The biology's in charge.
Yeah, 100%. I know. I wanted her to admit it, PhD. It's one thing if I say it, I don't, but if I get her to admit it, so.
Well, you have Ken's email. I'm not sure if you have my email or not, but either way, email Ken for contact information. Because first of all, I'd love to get her on this podcast, but second of all, I'd love to chop it up with her. Specifically about, not only just the Iroquois, but there's, ecto and endo. So there are, two specific types of fungi that react very, very differently in their interaction. So one cakes the outside of the root, the other one penetrates inside the root. So very, very different strategies. And that was something that I never quite understood about that specific type of the Iroquois, whether it is a coating on the out, or is it a penetration on the in, or a combination of both. And this goes back to some work I did with rhododendrons and azaleas, which are also Iroquois, and the results that I got were amazing when I used compost extracts. So I have to believe that, like Muncher Juice, this company I'm working with now, ESS, that when you create these dissolved organic matter preparations, that you are creating some of these extra polymetric substances, i.e. biofilms, necromass, and things like, basically creating primordial soup. So whenever you're applying these to indigenous organisms, they're expanding because they just got an injection of this, superfood that they didn't ordinarily get. So anyway, those are some of the things I'd love to talk to her about. But we're about 5 minutes past our usual questioning time.
Okay.
You got a few questions, bro.
All right.
Okay, we're going to start with Peter Cactus here. Cranberries grow in water. Are they growing out of the soil into water? Are they aquatic?
So cranberries, they grow in low pH sandy soils. I think of their native environment is being Cape Cod on the sand dunes. So they prefer to be dry. The roots prefer to be dry. However, the root, it's 4 or 5 inches deep, maybe 6 inches deep, actual root structure. So even though they like to be dry, they still need close access to water. We flood them for 2 times of the year. There's a cultural practice in the spring where every few years we'll flood them it's an IPM practice. It suppresses the pest pressures. And now that I learned about fermenting, I think it ferments the cranberry bed. So that's what, last week I asked about flooding a bed that had EM applied. Like, is it fermenting it? Because the cultural practice of lake water, you put a bed underwater in the spring for a month. And then, during that season to apply less fertilizer, up a third, you want to apply 2/3 less than what you normally would do. So, as I learned about this fermenting process, I'm thinking like, man, maybe we were fermenting the whole time. We never realized it. So, and especially now, if you start to apply, these ferments, you're adding that biology it's going to be primed and ready to go if you do end up doing that late water. The other time we do put water on them, or 2 other times, is once for harvest. If we wet harvest is commodity cranberries, craisins, juice, that kind of end product. For fresh fruit, what we do is a dry pick harvest method. So the cranberries have to be dry. We pick them with a little machine that has like little teeth on them, and they knock the fruit off. And then the third time we flood them is during the winter. If we have a cold blast, like 20 degrees Fahrenheit with 30-mile-an-hour winds with no snow, the ground's frozen. What happens is those roots will dry out, and basically it's like a drought damage, but over the winter. So, historically we would we flood them and then drain them within a week or so. So, except for the spring lake water, like I said, you flood it and then you hold it for a month.
So primarily using water as an insulation against severe cold that could create frost damage or drying up of the roots.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. During the winter, and then during harvest, it's just almost like a lubrication to help with the harvest aspect.
Yep.
And
something else too is that the audience has heard me speak of many, many times, and that is take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it 3/4 full of sand, add as much water as you can, measure how much water goes in there. It'll blow your mind. Take that bucket, flip it over, make a sand castle, and watch how long it takes to dry that sand out. Everyone thinks water just rushes through sand. It doesn't. It bonds in there. So that sand actually has a lot of water vapor in it, and it has access to, as the surface dries out, we have what's called surface tension or osmotic properties, where the moisture from below will get pulled up. Again, it's not going to be wet, but it's going to be moist, and so that's why those cranberries can survive even in the sand dunes, literally, where you think there's no moisture, but actually, if you dig down, there is. Anyway, that's my 2 cents from a soil engineer side.
Well, that's why sand is so important in a bed, because it does help to hold that moisture into it. And there's all the components in the sand that the biology can break out and mine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this one's directly for you, Leighton. Will the press that you were talking about earlier, will it crush biochar?
Yeah, it would definitely crush biochar. I think there's a lot more cost-effective ways to crush biochar. Like mixing it in with larger rocks and tumbling it. But yeah, I mean, it's strong, dude. I used Atlas bar. So for those of you who don't understand what Atlas bar is, it's an engineering bar. It's threaded, and it's used to lift giant pieces of steel to get them tweaked into perfect place so that they can be welded. So the strength of Atlas bar is amazing. Like I've cranked on that thing. I put a 6-foot rod on one side of it for leverage and just kept cranking and cranking and cranking. So I couldn't break the damn thing. So will it crush biochar? Yes, but again, you need to have a proper support method to put that much pressure on it without breaking it or bending.
Okay. We'll go actually to a background question on that one right away here. Then how do you get the biochar back if you tumble it with rocks?
Oh, easy. Just screen out the rocks. So there's these dudes out here that are making micronized biochar, which I thought was fucking genius, so that the local farmers can put it right into their irrigation system. Because biochar is notoriously difficult to install. So, it's a lot of labor, it's manual, somehow, some way you got to spread it. So these cats came up with a way to micronize it. So it's so small that it won't clog drip emitters. How they micronize it, I'm not sure, but obviously some kind of crushing technology. We've all seen the rock grinders that turn boulders into dust, literally, or rock flour in some cases. So it's probably a piece of equipment like that, some kind of grinder that they're using. I don't think this would micronize it. It would definitely crush it, but it wouldn't micronize it.
Okay. Can you propagate the native cranberries? Continue that old genetic?
Yeah. So typically, for renovating or for planting new varieties or just cranberries in general, it's what I call clones, essentially. So it's just like cannabis. You cut off the top and you plant it in the fresh soil, and they will grow roots. And actually, it makes me wonder. I know there's native blueberries that have been dated to be 10,000 years old. So if I have a native variety and it was cut from Cape Cod, does that mean how old are those ones it was cut from? Are they 10,000 years old? Does that mean I have a 10,000-year-old plant on my farm, even though it was planted 100 years ago? Is it really older than that? I don't know. It depends. How do you want to measure it, really?
I would have to say it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Because think about it, back then, we weren't 120 years ago, we weren't heavily into breeding or inbreeding or exbreeding plants to have different traits. I would tend to believe that, this is 1900. Yeah, people were dabbling with it, but for the most part, like if there was a farmer that wanted to create a bog, he went and found those plants probably out on Cape Cod and brought it back.
Yeah.
So they came from somewhere, dude, and they have evolved to survive on Cape Cod. So gotta believe they've been there for a long fucking time.
Yeah, and I will say they respond better with the biology, with everything I've been doing. The native ones, the older beds, they respond so much better. The hybrids are nice, bigger fruit, but they were bred for big, be big, dumb, and big and dumb, I guess.
And nutritionless. Look good.
Yeah, exactly. So. And it's funny because we do like a cranberry roundtable every year, and there was a survey, and people were asked about what their favorite variety is. And what's trending now is the native varieties are starting to trend back. For quite a while, it was about this hybrid or that hybrid, but people, the hybrids, they're big, they're I don't know, beautiful, I guess, but they're a pain in the ass. They need the right temperature. They need the right water. You trip a little bit. They don't bounce back very well. There's no resiliency there versus the natives. I mean, you can beat them up all year round and they do great come harvest. So it's funny to start to see that. Like I said in the survey, that's starting to come back as the natives are starting to come back, which is awesome because I was getting to the point where are we just going to replace them all with these hybrids, and it'd be like the lost apples of the 1800s or something.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, you got to clone them now. That could be a whole side business.
I know,
So-
I know. Like I said, for me, I'd always keep a variety. I'd always keep, the native ones, or at least one of the native ones. But yeah, and like I said, the ag tourism, you start to look, you can buy, these cranberry plugs online for like $25. I'm like, I could be doing that,
Mhm.
do it native varieties. It's a little twist to it, and so
Yep.
we'll see.
There's your winter hobby for this year.
I know.
So we're talking about fish hydrolysates, etc. And Kevin ran into the problem where he was getting soil fleas. Can you speak on that, guys, on different methodologies to get rid of soil fleas?
Well, it's an imbalance, dude. Whatever the reason they're out of control is that they don't have a predator, and so obviously, the best thing in the world to do is start playing around with compost extracts, and a lot of biology, and focus on plants that either bank them so that that gives them a place to go, so you can see the populations where you can then remove the plant, i.e., removing that population, or banker plants for predators of the flea. Like, dude, if you had a lot of centipedes, I bet they would just friggin' tear them up for breakfast. So you're just, it's an imbalance of some kind. That's the only reason you get that stuff. There you go.
And like
predator prey.
Predator prey. Yep. So let's go here. Any books or authors you'd recommend for someone wanting to learn proper soil composition?
Wow, that's a big topic.
That's a long list.
Oh, yeah. I would say, you know what? I love these two basic forms to start people off. If you're a visual and audio learner, Symphony of the Soil. It's a 1 hour, 20-minute documentary. They're not paid actresses and actors. They're just normal, everyday people. But their insights are beautiful on trying to grasp what is healthy soil, what is a healthy farm versus an unhealthy farm or an unhealthy soil. And then, of course, Jeff Lowenfeld's trilogy, which is about to become 4 books, I believe, if it hasn't already. Cool. And so Jeff Lowenfeld's is teeming with microbes, teeming with nutrients, teeming with fungi, and I forget what his 4th one is coming out. But those are great reads to begin and unlock the process of understanding what's the difference between dirt and soil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mentioned before when Weeds Talk, I bought that middle of June, July or so, and it has every plant you can think of, and it gives you the description of what that weed would need to survive in. So once you start reading this book, it gives you a good preference of what is required for that plant to grow in, and then it gives you a whole list of plants, and you can pick whatever plant you see. And like I said, like little blue stem, or I mentioned daughter earlier, the pathetic plant, or fireweed, or you name it. I mean, it's in this book, and it gives you the whole description: low organic matter, low calcium, whatever. Once you start, you read through the first chapter or 2, but then like the rest of it, it's a whole index, and it opens up your eyes. Then you can see, all right, this field's covered in all these grasses. Look up that grass, and it says low calcium, low magnesium, whatever, and at least for me, at least for this year, it's been kind of an eye opener, because like I said, once you learn that stuff, then it's like you see that plant, what the soil's telling you what it wants.
Yeah,
Well, that's why I keep telling people weeds equals medicinal plants for the soil. You can really learn a lot from the weeds that are growing in your area.
Amen to that. And remember, at the end of the day, they're doing all of their work, mining that soil, coming up to the surface, and dying specifically so the next succession of plant can move in.
Well, that's why the fermenting that Cass is doing is so amazing, because that's exactly what his soil needs,
Yeah.
to be put back into itself. So that fantastic, and kudos to you, Cass.
Yeah, it's time warping. You're jumping, geological time, which is fantastic.
Before I finish, I wanted to mention we did 500 gallons of Japanese knotweed. So there's an organic fungicide called Regelia. It's, I don't know, like $200 a gallon. It's insane expensive, but it's organically certified fungicide. You look at the label, it's Japanese knotweed extract.
Yep.
So I was like, wait, okay, we got the stuff growing off on the side. We mow it because it's, it grows like gangbusters. Why don't we try to make our own? Like I said, we can do it for $1 a gallon. So we ended up doing that. We did 500 gallons. And the only thing is we wanted, because it's a fungicide, so we wanted the plant hormones. The other aspect of fermenting is you try to keep mindful of it, what the plant you're harvesting to ferment, what life stage it's in. So we wanted, since we knew we were going to apply it during bloom, we wanted for this Japanese knotweed to be blooming, which it blooms between August and September, right before harvest. So we waited for it to be blooming. We chopped down a ton of this stuff, took the roots out even. And like I said, I had the stuff cooking, and it was crazy. We were cooking. It's been cooking, gosh, since then. But you go, I tap at the side of the tote. I still have air bubbles coming out of it, so you can still see it's active in there, even though it's not all of it's not indoors. It's underneath the trees and stuff. It's but so it goes with the weather. But I've been surprised. It's been chewing it up pretty good.
Nice. Yep. That's going to be
So,
rocket fuel come spring.
I know. I'm excited.
So what are alternatives for blueberries to acidic white peat, sphagnum peat moss in potting mixed growth soils?
So there's two types of mosses. There's sphagnum moss, which typically shows that you have a wet soil. There's also haircat moss, which grows in dry. It doesn't. Haircat moss prefers dry soils, but they look exactly the same. So I would just say make sure you know which moss you're looking at. If it's sphagnum moss, they like to be wet, so maybe it could be a little too wet. So maybe think about drainage. If it's haircat moss, those are tougher to deal with. You could try, like I said, if it's in a pot, you could easily, pluck it out, hand weed it out. And in terms of management, like I said, probably just keeping an eye on your moisture, because they like the same pH environment, the same sand as blueberries. So, but at the same time, they could also grow with it natively. So it may be a weed, but it may be a comparison or companion plant.
And they too are also Iroquois blueberries.
Yeah.
He wants to get acidic soil. So that was is it
To lower
better,
the pH.
Yeah, what's better to use to lower the pH to get an acidic soil for blueberries?
I'd go full power.
Yeah.
Bioag full power comes in at 3.5 pH perpetual. I'll fucking nuke that shit up good. And the other thing is organic acids. So any kind of, if you make a really good compost and press it, and make a compost extract or a humic or fulvic acid out of it on your own, then there's a great way to lower the pH.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I know the ferments are like around 3 pH. So if you use a lot of those, to lower it, it's funny. I do tissue samples, soil samples. My soil samples this year in beds that I've done in 2020, this year there's 6. 2020 there were 5. So they increased exponentially. I mean, it's 1 pH, but it's on the scale, it's insane. But then the physical plant is at a 4 pH. So the plant's at 4, the soil's at 6. What is that? I don't know what it means. Yeah, I guess
it's all about
the
the
only thing
biology.
it's all about the biology, because the biology is, it's the soil's at 6, the plant's at 4. Who's making the difference? Like I said, they're tested this more or less the same time. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's the biology. It's that it's either the plant likes to be at 4, so that's where the plant stays at. But at 4 pH, you get lockout on a lot of nutrition. But at 6 pH, you don't get that lockout. So maybe this biology is increasing that soil pH so it can extract what it needs, and then the plant can stay at its 4 where it likes, but it can still get its nutrition. I don't know. I don't know the answer on that. I scratch my head on it all the time.
You just answered it. Just
Yep.
have the faith. You just fucking answered it perfectly. Biology regulates pH so that the plant can get the nutrition that would otherwise be locked out in higher or lower pHs. And that's
the biology controls the pH right at the root hairs. So it's you dig up a different section of root, it's a different pH than a section over here. So it's all about that balance, and it's biodiversity again.
Yeah, and it's time of year and demand of the plant. Like in different times of the year, the plant's going to need different minerals or nutrients, so it's going to release different bacteria to change that pH up or down.
Yeah, like I said, for me, from going from 5 to 6 in 4 years, I didn't apply any soil pH additives. I didn't do any of that. It did it on its own. And the only thing I did was stop killing it, and it did what it wanted to do, I guess.
Again, being a good steward and not a controller.
Yeah. And Leighton, what you said there, you look at what James White was talking about, where the biology is changing its own aspects so fast that we can't even understand it. And that's part of that, changing pH, changing the workforce. So instead of having a bunch of carpenters, all of a sudden you bring in a bunch of electricians to do the next stage, right? And speaking of James White, he actually, on his last episode that he was on, he actually said it's all about the biology. So there's somebody that you can refer to, Cass, that has the credentials, understands it's all about the biology.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's, like I said, I saw him on this podcast, and he blew me away. And then he went to the NOFA conference last year, and I was not organic. I never planned to be organic. If I used that to go in the organic NOFA conference, I was like, all right, I guess I'll be a member because I want to see this guy speak. And I was so excited. He came up from New Jersey, and it was nice because it was a, I don't know, 50 people, but it was a relatively small crowd compared to for me, I thought it was like, this guy is coming from Hollywood. As far, for me, he's inspiring, to see his work, to see. And then the fact that he comes out and talks about it too is the big aspect to it.
And he's not afraid to theorize. That's what I love.
Yeah.
He's so willing to be open and say, hey, maybe that's a really good idea. I think that could track, and not be afraid to step on the toes of his fellow scientists.
Mm-hmm. Same with Dr. Pollock. He's taking it to the next level and theorizing, well, what if? And it's always the what if that really leads down that wormhole. You go right through the rabbit hole down to the wormhole and go, okay, what's really going on down here?
Yeah.
He's another one we got to catch up with. We haven't talked to him in over a year.
Yeah, you get him on.
Yeah, he was busy before Christmas here, but he is going to be coming on here in the new year.
Nice.
So yeah, we can wait for him to come on. So we're at the 2 hours, guys. Do you have anything left that you'd like to point out?
I want to ask Leighton a question. So I made a compost tea brewer. It's a 7.5 gallon container. I was inspired by one of my mentors who actually is part of NOFA. He showed me the firm. He got me excited about this compost. He was like, "Oh, you can make humic acids. You can make nutrition." I'm like, "What do you mean you make humic acids? I thought you just buy that." And I said, "No, you have it right here." So, anyways, he got me down the wormhole. I wish I had more time. I'd get more of the compost. It seems more like you need to be more active to it. And then anyways, he showed me he had like a tea brewer and everything, and he gave me instructions how to make one. So as I'm leaving, he had this jar of like plants he was fermenting. I'm like, hey, what's that? He's like, oh, these are ferments. I was like, what do you mean? What does that mean? He explained it and everything. That kind of like tripped me off. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean? You just don't throw it in the woods? And so that kind of was part of it. But so anyways, I guess what I was getting to is my native beds, great mycorrhizals, right? I know they're there. I got them tested. The USDA tested them. They're in the whatever. They're in the software. I want to convert or transfer the Iroquois mycorrhizal and put them in. So I'm thinking if I take soil cores of that bed, put them on my compost tea brewer, brew them around for, I don't know, a few hours, and then spray them. The only thing I wonder, so I know we're on the north side of the equator. Sometimes I can get my compost brewer to go clockwise. Sometimes I can go counterclockwise. Which direction do I go? Does it matter? I mean, I know that, Pollock would be the probably the guy to answer that one, but
So you have what's called a radial compost tea brewer, so it spins the water out on one side to spin it. Got you. Okay, so to answer your question, the best way would be two-part. So one, you want to harvest the mycorrhizae spores at the appropriate time. Typically in a fruiting mushroom body, that would be out here this time of year in January, February, March. I don't know about your specific type and if it even fruits, but it will sporulate. I just don't know what time. So that would be a question for that lady. By the way, what time does this mycorrhizae or this Iroquois sporulate? So that's one. And the next is to take the roots of a plant, dry them out, chop them up with a little coffee grinder or any kind of plant grinder. Chop them up really super fine, then add them into your brew and brew it out and apply. Okay. That's how you will get what's called one of the propagules. So one of the propagules is the infection site where the mycorrhizae is inside of the root. That's a really good one. And the other is the spores. There has never been validation that hyphae can actually grow. There's never been a scientific paper, believe it or not, that took hyphae out of soil, put it in other soil, and had it grow out. So there's only two valid propagules of the three known propagules. One is the infection site, and two is the spores. So just rule out trying to capture hyphae and
okay. No, that's good. No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the turning clockwise, Master Cho recommends clockwise. And in my years of working in the energetic field, clockwise is a positive creation of energy, and counterclockwise is a negative creation of energy. So I would recommend, if you want positive results, to always go to the positive side.
There you go.
Biodynamics gets into that rabbit hole deep too.
Yeah.
About different times a year, you want to spin in different directions. So dabble a little in biodynamics because they're really into that vortex philosophy. And I think that Ken's absolutely right. In the energy world, they do teach positive clockwise, negative counterclockwise. You need both energies, guys. Yin and yang. Can't have both without the other. So it's appropriately using them.
Balance? Can anyone say balance?
Exactly. Talk to your Libra friend.
So I want to say to the chat, Happy New Year's, everybody. I hope you guys have a tremendous year coming up. You guys want to say anything?
Happy New Year's, guys.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Cheers.
And thanks for coming on every week as loyal followers. I don't know how many were on today, but I saw a lot of fresh or normal faces. So thanks.
Nice.
Thanks for participating with this podcast. We appreciate the audience, and hopefully you're getting some good knowledge out of this and can share it with others.
Yeah, well, thank you guys.
Cass, thank you, brother, for giving us 2 hours of your time. Awesome update. Love having you on. can't wait to hear fucking your experiences next fall. And Ken,
Yep.
Happy New Year from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for all the hard work and congratulations. We're turning 3.
Yeah. We don't know who our guest is for next week for the first season 3, but we'll find out here in the next few days.
Dude,
And I have been talking to Terraganics guys, so we'll be talking, getting them on to talk more about EM1 and what they're doing and why they're doing it. So you can stay tuned for that as well. Andy and I do have a show on Wednesday, so that'll be the first show of this year. But other than that, guys, we love you all. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let other people know what's going on. We're one of the best kept secrets on YouTube right now, and we need an explosion of more people learning what we're doing here.
I'm into that.
awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Well, stick around, guys. I'm going to end the stream, and we'll talk a little bit more after the show. So peace out, everybody, and we'll see you in the new year.